She thought she had all the power. She thought firing me would solve her problems. But the truth? It was the beginning of her complete destruction. I was a dedicated network architect, terminated without warning just 2 hours before one of the company's most critical system migrations. In that moment of chaos, I held something more valuable than she realized: access to everything. With one simple action, I could obliterate her entire career. And that's exactly what happened, but not in any way she could have anticipated. This is how I turned her own directive into the weapon that dismantled everything she'd built. My name is Frank Holloway, and at 32, I believed I'd carved out my niche in the tech industry. Crimson Wave Technologies wasn't just another software firm in Seattle's competitive tech scene. It was supposed to represent something different. The hiring presentation 4 years ago emphasized innovation, teamwork, and appreciation for expertise. What I received instead was an ETA, advanced education in office warfare, and the gradual understanding that excellence could paint a target on your back. I served as the lead infrastructure engineer with exclusive administrative credentials to our most vital platform, the integration hub connecting us to Silver Lake Industries, our premier client generating $3.8 million in annual revenue. This wasn't a role I'd aggressively pursued. I'd secured it through endless evenings troubleshooting systems, designing redundancies, and becoming the sole person willing to master the convoluted legacy architecture everyone else avoided. The CTO, Raymond Ortega, had personally assigned me this duty after the previous administrator had catastrophically mishandled a standard patch deployment, triggering a 16-hour blackout that nearly terminated our agreement. He'd met my gaze that afternoon and stated, "Frank, you're the only engineer I can depend on for this. Don't disappoint me." I never faltered, not once across 22 months, but confidence, I discovered, could become a blade in the wrong hands. Lillian Porter arrived as our division chief 7 months ago, importing the kind of destructive atmosphere that contaminated everything nearby. Early 40s, dark-haired, with the rehearsed charm of someone who'd ascended the corporate hierarchy by crushing competitors rather than collaborating with colleagues. She brandished her Stanford MBA like a shield and employed her previous tenure at Fortune 100 corporations like a hammer, striking down anyone who dared oppose her vision for the department. From the beginning, Lillian resented that I maintained direct communication with Raymond regarding all Silver Lake matters. She perceived it as a fracture in her dominion, a notification that despite her position, certain aspects of her territory remained beyond her grasp. The passive-aggressive messages commenced instantly. Moving forward, all infrastructure decisions must route through appropriate management channels. Appropriate channel being her, naturally. I observed her methodically dismantle the careers of 3 senior developers who'd challenged her approaches. First, arrived the excessive oversight, then the unrealistic deadlines, followed by public humiliation during department meetings for failing to achieve said deadlines. All 3 departed within 4 months. Lillian would consistently offer the same explanation afterward. Not everyone thrives in a demanding environment. The pressure had been mounting for weeks. Lillian had been advocating for a comprehensive reorganization that would grant her exclusive control of all critical platforms. Raymond had been hesitant, but Lillian was convincing, particularly with the CEO who appreciated her budget reduction proposals and aggressive schedules. Last Monday, I'd transmitted Lillian a standard vulnerability assessment regarding the approaching Silver Lake system migration, a complete platform transition scheduled for Wednesday at 9 a.m. Precisely. I'd identified 4 critical dependencies requiring careful oversight and recommended we maintain a secondary administrator on standby. Her reply was vintage. "Lillian, stop manufacturing issues where none exist. The infrastructure has been stable for months. Concentrate on your assigned responsibilities instead of creating panic." I'd learned not to debate. I simply forwarded my concerns to Raymond with a courteous note that I'd continue monitoring the situation. Lillian must have intercepted that message. In this realm of corporate monitoring, nothing remained confidential for long. Tuesday morning, I entered at 7:15 a.m. as standard, travel mug in hand, prepared for the pre-migration preparations. My workstation occupied the corner of the fourth floor, enveloped by the steady hum of cooling systems and the rhythm of typing. I cherished that sound. It signified things were functioning. Systems were operational. The digital pulse of the company was beating properly. I accessed the Silver Lake control panel, observing the green status indicators flashing steadily. Everything was optimal. The load distributors were performing at peak efficiency. The failover systems were active, and the data channels were flowing seamlessly. I completed my verification sequence once more, recording each confirmation in our compliance system. But something felt wrong. The office carried an unusual stillness. My colleagues were evading eye contact, immersing themselves in their displays with abnormal concentration. Derek, who typically stopped by for our morning discussion about his daughter's gymnastics competitions, walked past without acknowledgement. At 8:30 a.m., I noticed Lillian's office blinds were closed, unusual for someone who enjoyed surveying her domain. Through the space below her door, I could detect shadows shifting, multiple individuals inside. The muted voices carried an edge of tension. I returned to my displays, a cold weight forming in my gut. In the corporate environment, closed-door conferences before 9 a.m. meant someone's position was about to vanish. I just didn't grasp it would be mine, or that Lillian was about to provide me with the precise weapon I'd need to destroy her. At 8:55 a.m., Lillian's office door opened. She emerged with the deliberate stride of an executioner who'd just prepared her tools. Behind her, I glimpsed HR Director Amanda Burton organizing documents, her expression carefully blank. My blood turned to ice. Lillian walked directly to my workstation, her designer heels clicking against the polished floor like a timer. She didn't sit. She didn't ease her approach with casual conversation. She simply stood there, looking down at me with barely hidden satisfaction. "Shut down your workstation," she said, her voice projecting across the silent office. Effective immediately. The words suspended in the air like a bomb with the pin removed. I felt every gaze in the office shift toward us, though nobody dared look directly. My fingers froze over the keyboard as my mind calculated the implications. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed, maintaining my voice level despite the turmoil erupting in my thoughts. "You heard me. Shut down your workstation. Log out of all platforms. This is a direct directive." I glanced at my displays. The Silver Lake control panel still glowed green. The system migration was in less than 3 hours. Shutting down my workstation wouldn't just log me out. It would sever all active links to the integration hub, the platform I alone could access, the platform requiring constant supervision during the migration. "Lillian," I said slowly, selecting my words carefully, "the Silver Lake migration is at 9 a.m. If I shut down now, the integration hub connection will terminate. It requires at least 4 hours to properly restart with all the authentication protocols." "I didn't request your assessment," she interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "I gave you a directive. Shut it down." My mind was racing. This was insanity. She couldn't possibly comprehend what she was demanding, or perhaps she did, and this was her strategy all along: create a crisis, assign me the blame, validate her reorganization proposal. "I need this documented," I said, opening my email. My fingers moved swiftly, composing a message to Lillian with HR copied. "Per your verbal instruction at 8:57 a.m., I am to immediately shut down my workstation. Please confirm this directive. Note, this action will sever the Silver Lake Integration Hub connection approximately 2 hours before their system migration." I pressed send and looked up at her. Her jaw tightened. "I don't have patience for your manipulations, Frank. This is a direct verbal directive from your superior. Are you declining to comply?" The critical words. Declining a direct directive was grounds for immediate termination with cause. No severance, no unemployment compensation. She'd cornered me perfectly. Or so she believed. "I need to hear you state it one more time," I said, accessing our company's compliance log system. "For the record, you want me to shut down my workstation immediately, understanding that this will disconnect the Silver Lake Integration Hub." Her eyes flashed with irritation. "Yes, immediately. How many times must I repeat myself?" I typed her words directly into the compliance log, time-stamped at 8:59 a.m. Then I accessed the command terminal. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for one final moment. Lillian, this will cause... Do it now or security will remove you. I spotted James from security standing by the stairwell, attempting to appear casual. They'd orchestrated this down to every detail, everything except the ramifications of what they were demanding I do. I executed the shutdown sequence. One by one, my displays went dark. The Silver Lake control panel vanished. The connection status indicators turned red in the system logs. The integration hub that had been running continuously for 22 months came to an abrupt halt. "Good," Lillian said, satisfaction dripping from her voice. "Now collect your belongings. Your employment here is terminated effective immediately. HR will email you the paperwork." The words should have crushed me. 4 years of my life erased in an instant. But as I placed my personal items in a box, a coffee mug, a small succulent, a photo from the company retreat where we'd all appeared so content, I felt strangely serene. "Can I ask why?" I said, not because I didn't know, but because I wanted witnesses to hear her explanation. "Performance deficiencies," she said smoothly. "Failure to adjust to new leadership structures. It's all documented in your file. A file that didn't exist until this morning, undoubtedly." I nodded, picked up my box, and stood. Lillian stepped back, probably anticipating tears or pleas. Instead, I looked her directly in the eye. "I've complied with your direct directive to shut down my Workstation," I said clearly. "This has been logged in the compliance system at 8:59 a.m., 121 minutes before the Silver Lake migration. I hope you have a contingency plan." For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face, but it vanished in an instant, replaced by her usual arrogance. "That's no longer your concern. Security will escort you out." As James walked me to the elevator, I passed Raymond's office. He was in a conference call, unaware of what had just occurred, unaware that in approximately 2 hours, his biggest client would attempt to execute a system migration that no longer had a connection to our infrastructure. The elevator doors closed on my career at Crimson Wave, but I knew this wasn't finished. Lillian had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She'd given me a direct directive, and I'd followed it precisely. Sometimes the best revenge is simply providing people exactly what they request. The October air hit my face as I exited Crimson Waves. Glass tower, box in hand, dignity preserved. Instead of heading to my car, I walked across the plaza to Brewster's Coffee House, the small independent cafe where I'd spent countless lunch breaks. The owner, Vincent, raised an eyebrow as I walked in with my box of belongings at 9:15 a.m. "Early break?" he asked. "Something like that," I replied, settling into the window booth with a perfect view of Crimson Wave's main entrance. "Can I get a double espresso?" I pulled out my personal laptop and checked the time. 9:35 a.m., 85 minutes until the Silver Lake migration. I knew their CEO, Catherine Brennan, was probably already in their operations center, surrounded by executives and technical teams prepared to activate their revolutionary trading infrastructure, the infrastructure that depended entirely on our integration hub to function. My phone buzzed. Derek from my team. "What the hell just happened? Lillian's acting like everything's normal." I didn't respond. There would be time for explanations later. At 9:50 a.m., I watched Lillian exit the building, probably heading to her usual pre-meeting coffee run at the expensive place 3 blocks north. She walked with that same confident stride, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing animatedly. Still playing the executive, still thinking she'd won. 10:15 a.m. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see increased activity on the 4th floor, people moving faster, clustering around workstations, pointing at displays, the first signs of panic. 10:30 a.m. Lillian returned, coffee in hand, still oblivious. She strolled through the lobby like a queen surveying her kingdom. I sipped my espresso and waited. 11:00 a.m., 0 hour. The transformation was almost instantaneous. Even from across the plaza, I could see the shift in atmosphere. What started as confused expressions quickly escalated to frantic movement, people sprinting between cubicles, phones ringing constantly. Someone, I think it was Brian from Network Operations, actually pressed his face against the window, looking down at the street as if the solution might be written on the pavement. 11:08 a.m. A black sedan screeched to a stop in front of the building. Raymond Ortega emerged, his usually calm demeanor fractured as he practically ran toward the entrance. He never ran. In 4 years, I'd never seen him move faster than a purposeful walk. 11:22 a.m. 3 more vehicles arrived. I recognized Silver Lake's legal team. They had a very distinctive way of moving, like predators who detected blood. Catherine Brennan herself stepped out of the third car, her face a portrait of controlled fury. My phone exploded with messages. Former colleagues, friends from other divisions, even the facilities manager had my number somehow. I silenced it and ordered a sandwich. This was going to be a lengthy show. 11:35 a.m. I saw Lillian through the windows being escorted, not walking, being escorted, toward what I knew was the executive conference room. Her body language had completely transformed. The confident stride was gone, replaced by something that resembled a stumble. Derek texted again. The Silver Lake platform crashed at launch. They're saying it's a complete system failure. Billions in transactions frozen. CNBC just picked up the story. I accessed CNBC's business page on my laptop. Sure enough, breaking. Major trading infrastructure fails at launch. Billions in transactions halted. The article was brief but devastating. Sources indicated a critical connection failure had caused the entire infrastructure to become non-responsive at the exact moment of activation. Trading had been suspended. The SEC was investigating. Silver Lake's stock price had dropped 15% in 22 minutes. 11:52 a.m. My phone rang. Raymond Ortega. Frank, where are you? Across the plaza, Brewster's Coffee. We need you here immediately. I'm afraid I can't do that, Raymond. I've been terminated. Lillian made that very clear. A pause. Frank, please. The entire Silver Lake system is down. You need someone with administrative credentials to restore the integration hub connection. I finished. I understand. But I was given a direct directive to shut down my workstation and was terminated immediately after. I have no authorization to access company platforms. This is a crisis. Yes, it is. Perhaps you should ask Lillian about her contingency plan. She seemed very confident when she ordered me to shut down the system 2 hours before the migration. Another pause, longer this time. She did what? It's all in the compliance logs. 8:59 a.m. Her direct directive, despite my warnings about the Silver Lake migration. I have the email requesting written confirmation, though she declined to provide it. I'm sure HR has documentation. I heard muffled voices in the background, sharp and urgent. Stay where you are, Raymond said finally. Just stay where you are. 12:25 p.m. The black sedans hadn't departed. Anything more had arrived. I recognized our legal team's vehicles, and was that the CEO's Mercedes? Elliot Shaw rarely came to the office, preferring to work from his waterfront estate, but here he was, practically running into the building. The coffeehouse was filling with the lunch crowd, but I maintained my position by the window. This was better than any performance I'd ever watched. Lillian Porter, the untouchable Stanford MBA, the woman who'd systematically destroyed careers just to demonstrate she could, was finally facing the consequences of her own arrogance. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Silver Lake stock had dropped 28%. Trading remained suspended. The SEC had released a statement about investigating the systematic failure. I opened my compliance log screenshot, the one I'd had the foresight to capture before my system went dark. There it was, time-stamped and undeniable. Lillian Porter's direct directive to shut down the system, despite clear warning about the frayed consequences. She'd thought she was untouchable. She'd thought firing me would cement her authority. Instead, she'd pulled the pin on her own grenade. I ordered another espresso and settled in to watch the aftermath unfold. At 1:05 p.m., Raymond called again. Frank, we need you in conference room B, now. I'm terminated, remember? You're being temporarily reinstated as a consultant. Please, the lawyers say we need you here. I took my time finishing my espresso, then walked across the plaza. Security looked confused when I entered, but Raymond was waiting in the lobby, his usually immaculate appearance showing signs of stress, his tie loosened, his shirt collar unbuttoned. Thank you for coming, he said, leading me to the elevator. This is a catastrophe. I tried to warn her, I said simply. Conference room B was a battlefield. Papers scattered across the table, laptops everywhere, coffee cups abandoned and cold. At the head of the table sat Elliot Shaw, our CEO, his face granite. To his right, Catherine Brennan from Silver Lake, looking like she wanted to strangle someone. Legal teams flanked both sides. HR huddled in the corner, and there, at the far end, sat Lillian, somehow looking both defiant and deflated. "Mr. Holloway," Elliot Shaw said, "thank you for joining us. We need to understand exactly what happened this morning." I remained standing. "Where would you like me to start?" "From the beginning," Catherine Brennan interjected, her voice ice. "My infrastructure is dead. 800 million in transactions frozen. The SEC is investigating me. Someone's going to explain how this happened, or I'm suing everyone in this room for breach of contract." Lillian shifted in her seat. "This is a technical failure. Frank was responsible for maintaining—" "Stop," I said, pulling out my phone. "Let's examine the facts." I connected my phone to the presentation screen. The compliance log appeared, clear as day. 8:57 a.m., Lillian Porter approaches my workstation and directs me to shut down my workstation. I warn her this will disconnect the Silver Lake integration hub. She insists. "That's taken out of context," Lillian started. I swiped to the next screenshot. 8:58 a.m. I send this email requesting written confirmation of the directive, explicitly stating the consequences. Lillian refuses to provide written confirmation, but verbally insists I proceed. She was being terminated for performance deficiencies. Amanda Burton from HR interjected. "What performance deficiencies?" Raymond interrupted. "Frank has had excellent reviews for 4 years. I personally commended his work last quarter." Lillian's face reddened. "He was insubordinate, constantly challenging decisions." "You mean warning you about risks?" I pulled up another document. "Like this vulnerability assessment I sent you Monday about the Silver Lake migration. The one where I identified 4 critical dependencies and suggested backup coverage?" Catherine Brennan leaned forward. "He received a vulnerability assessment and ignored it?" His response was, and I quote, "Stop manufacturing issues where none exist. Concentrate on your assigned responsibilities instead of creating panic." The room went silent. Elliot Shaw's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. "But here's the critical part," I continued, pulling up the system architecture diagram. "The Silver Lake integration hub requires continuous connection to maintain synchronization. Once disconnected, it needs a complete reinitialization sequence that requires approximately 4 hours minimum, assuming all authentication protocols are followed correctly." 4 hours? Catherine Brennan stood up. "You're telling me this woman ordered you to disconnect a system that requires 4 hours to restore? 2 hours before my migration?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Lillian's voice cracked as she tried to steady herself. "I didn't comprehend the technical implications," she said, as if ignorance were a shield rather than an indictment. Raymond's eyes narrowed, his calm demeanor replaced by something colder, disbelief sharpened by fury. "You didn't comprehend." His voice dropped to a register that could have frozen flames. "You're the division chief. You've been in charge for 7 months. How could you not comprehend our most critical system, the one that handles nearly $4 million in annual revenue, the one that our largest client built their entire infrastructure around?" Lillian shifted in her seat, her fingers tightening around the edge of the polished mahogany table. She glanced toward HR, then to the CEO, but found no refuge. "She should have explained better," she snapped, pointing at me as if I were a problem to be dismissed rather than a professional whose warnings had been systematically ignored. "I tried," I said, my voice level, but edged with quiet certainty. I tapped my phone, and the projection screen flickered to life with another document, this one an email thread dated just 6 weeks prior. Here's one of them. Subject line: Silver Lake Integration Hub Maintenance Protocol, required reading for leadership. I walked through failover triggers, authentication dependencies, and recovery timelines in plain language. I even included a visual flowchart. I scrolled, and this one, from 3 months ago, detailed the exact scenario we're in right now. A forced disconnection within 4 hours of migration window. Guaranteed cascade failure. I looked around the room. In the past 7 months, I've sent Lillian 23 separate communications, emails, shared documents, calendar invites for architecture reviews about the Silver Lake system. She opened 8 of them, responded to exactly 0. Silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Even the hum of the building's HVAC system seemed to pause. Nathan Pierce, our in-house legal counsel, a man known for his dry wit and even drier depositions, cleared his throat. "Mr. Holloway," he said, leaning forward with pen poised over a legal pad, "do you have documentation of Ms. Porter's directive this morning to shut down your workstation, despite your explicit warnings about the migration?" "Audio log from my desk phone," I replied, "captured automatically per company policy for all workstation activity in secure zones. Email trail requesting written confirmation, which she declined to provide. And witness testimonies. 15 team members were present when she ordered the shutdown. Derek in Network Ops, Maya from Compliance, even your own junior legal associate, Mr. Pierce. He was walking past my cubicle during the exchange." Lillian's face flushed. "This is a setup," she burst out, voice rising to a near shriek. "He deliberately sabotaged the system. He knew what would happen." I turned to her slowly. "How?" I asked, calm as a still lake. "By following your direct directive. You stood over my desk, told me to shut down immediately, and said security would remove me if I didn't comply. Should I have refused a direct order from my superior? Because if I had, you would have fired me for insubordination. If I obeyed, the system fails. Either way, you win, unless someone documents the truth." Nathan didn't look up from his notes. "Ms. Porter," he said evenly, "did you or did you not order Mr. Holloway to shut down his workstation, knowing there was a critical Silver Lake system migration scheduled in 2 hours?" Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. She looked like a marionette whose strings had been cut. Catherine Brennan, CEO of Silver Lake Industries, slammed her palm on the table so hard the coffee cups jumped. "I want her terminated today," she said, voice low and lethal. "And I want Frank rehired, with a raise, a public apology, and full authority over the integration architecture. If I don't get that by end of business, Silver Lake terminates our entire contract and files a lawsuit for no less than $800 million in direct damages, plus reputational harm and SEC-related penalties." Lillian gasped. "You can't threaten—" "I just did," Catherine cut in, leaning forward until her eyes locked onto Lillian's. "Your incompetence didn't just break a server. It froze billions in live transactions. My board is in emergency session. The SEC just issued a subpoena. My legal team is drafting depositions as we speak, and all of it traces back to you ordering the only person who understood the system to walk away from it 2 hours before launch." Elliot Shaw, Crimson Wave's CEO, finally stood. His face was stone. "Lillian," he said, voice devoid of warmth, "you are suspended effective immediately, pending a full internal and external investigation. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings, then off the premises. Do not attempt to access any company systems." "This is wrongful termination," Lillian cried, voice cracking. "No," Nathan Pierce said, closing his notebook with a soft thud. "What you did to Mr. Holloway this morning, firing a critical employee without cause, without contingency, and against explicit technical counsel, that was wrongful termination. What's happening to you now? That's consequence management." Lillian rose unsteadily, her designer heels wobbling on the carpet. Her eyes found mine, and in that moment, I saw it, the dawning horror of self-awareness, the realization that she hadn't outmaneuvered me, she'd armed me, that her arrogance had handed me the exact lever needed to topple her. "You planned this," she whispered, voice trembling. "No, Lillian," I replied, just as quietly. "I just gave you exactly what you ordered. You planned this the moment you decided that competence was a threat to your authority instead of the foundation of it." As 2 security officers entered and gently guided her out, I turned back to the room. "Now," I said, brushing imaginary dust from my jacket, "about restoring the Silver Lake connection. I'll need full root access, a clean terminal, and a team of 4 engineers, Derek, Maya, Chen, and Rivera. And I'll need about 3 hours, assuming no further interruptions." Raymond let out a breath that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Name your price. Triple my previous hourly rate as a consultant, I said. A formal written apology from Crimson Wave, signed by you and the CEO, acknowledging that my termination was made in error, and a guarantee that this morning's incident is expunged from all HR, legal, and security records, permanently. Elliot didn't hesitate. Done. Anything else? One more thing, I said. A binding policy. No non-technical executive may override a critical infrastructure decision without a documented risk assessment, dual. Approval from both the CTO and lead engineer, and a 48-hour waiting period for review. Nathan Pierce actually smiled. Already drafted, the board reviewed your evidence during the call. They're instituting it company-wide by Friday. I nodded. I'll be at my desk, or rather, my former desk, in 10 minutes. And someone should clear out Lillian's office. I'll need a quiet space to work. As I walked out, I heard Catherine Brennan say to Elliot, voice full of grudging admiration, "That man just saved your company. You better make sure he never leaves again." The system came back online at 4:17 p.m. The moment the green lights reignited across the integration dashboard, Silver Lake's trading floor resumed operations. Catherine called me personally, her tone softer now. "Frank, the board wants to explore a long-term strategic partnership with you in charge of the technical oversight. Whoever runs your division going forward will be working with us directly." But I wasn't done. Over the next 2 weeks, while rebuilding trust and hardening the infrastructure, I quietly compiled my insurance policy. Every email Lillian had sent dismissing technical concerns, her unauthorized overrides of access protocols, performance reviews she'd falsified to justify firing senior staff, and, most damning, a series of encrypted messages between her corporate account and a project manager at Cobalt Systems, a direct competitor. Nothing rose to the level of espionage, but the timing, the topics, and the secrecy, enough to trigger a deeper forensic audit. By month's end, Lillian wasn't just unemployed. She was under investigation for gross negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, and potential violations of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Crimson Wave, desperate to show reform, offered me the role of Chief Infrastructure Officer, 45% raise, direct reporting to the board, and, yes, Lillian's corner office with its panoramic view of Seattle's skyline. 3 weeks after the incident, I stood by that window at dusk, watching the city ignite with light. Each flicker represented someone like me, someone keeping systems alive while others took credit, took risks, or took aim. Lillian had mistaken control for power. She'd thought titles and threats would silence expertise, but real power doesn't shout, it logs, it timestamps, it waits. She walked in that Tuesday morning believing she was untouchable. She left that afternoon having handed me the very weapon that dismantled her, not through sabotage but through obedience, not through chaos but through clarity. The best revenge isn't always served cold. Sometimes it's served with a compliance log, a digital trail, and the simple devastating act of doing exactly as told. "Shut down your workstation," she'd said. So I did. And it cost her everything.